Hello, welcome to the Positive Posting Conversation, the show about how to have a better relationship with your dog and cat. I'm Zazie Todd, author of the books Bark, Wag and Purr, and creator of companion animal psychology blog. My co-host, Christy Benson, is a dog trainer and anthropologist, and she also works at the Academy for Dog Trainers. We can't give advice on your pet, so if you have concerns, see your dog trainer, cat behaviourist, or veterinarian as appropriate. Thanks for joining us today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Positive Post in Conversation. I'm Zazie Todd. Today, I'm not joined by my co-host, Christy Benson. She wasn't able to be with us today. However, I do have an absolutely fantastic guest, and I'm really thrilled that I finally get the chance to talk to Kerry Nichols, author of Puppy Brain, because if you were at Barkfest, then you will know that we hoped that Kerry would be able to join us for that, but unfortunately there was a veterinary emergency and she had to rush to the vet. So we missed out on hearing about her wonderful book then. And I love her book. So I'm thrilled that we get to hear about Puppy Brain today. Hi, Kerry. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we're finally making this happen.
I know, it's so exciting. So Kerry Nichols is a former attorney turned canine educator and advocate whose journey into the world of dogs began nearly 15 years ago. With the founding of Nickelberry Goldens, she dedicated herself to raising the healthiest golden retrievers possible. This evolved into a mission to instill emotional resilience and agency in her own puppies, a pursuit that she now shares with an audience of hundreds of thousands of followers across social media. And if you are not already following her on socials, you should do. And so we're here today to talk about her book, which I'm going to ask her to hold up to the camera. This is Puppy Brain, How Our Dogs Learn, Think and Love, and it's all about how to raise puppies who are happy and resilient and healthy dogs. And it's a national bestseller in the US, which is very well deserved and very exciting. And the paperback is coming soon, isn't it? Is that at the end of April, I think I saw?
That's exactly right. Yes, we get to do this all over again.
That's so exciting. But let's start at the beginning then. So you were an attorney and then somehow you got into breeding golden retrievers. How did this come about?
This is very natural. Doesn't everybody do that? I mean, one is probably not terribly connected to the other. I love research. I love school. I spent about a day out of law school in the real world of law and realized this is not going to be for me. I mean, it was pretty quick. And some of that is just, fit. I probably chose the wrong area for me, but I could just tell that law was not going to be my jam. And so I was looking for an off-ramp almost from the outset. And I think like life is funny. Sometimes you have to let a door completely close before the next one opens. And it just coincided that as I began to wean away from the practice of law, our golden Daisy got diagnosed with cancer, and we had bought a little piece of acreage in Clovis, the Central Valley of California. My kids were just about to start preschool. My time was beginning to get a little freed up a little bit. And all of these things kind of came together at the right time. And as I began to really research looking for our next golden, it evolved into the idea of what if I were to raise Goldens? And we had thought about that years ago, but it's one of those things you think about and then you forget you had thought about until then it bubbles back up and you're like, oh. And then I just became obsessed researching. I mean, I went a little bit nutty with it. Just researching, rearing golden retrievers, understanding the breed, everything that it would entail.
Well, we like to hear that on this podcast because we love people who like to do their research. And
Yes.
What you do is very science-based and evidence-based as well, which is wonderful. Now, I absolutely love golden retrievers. I think they're wonderful family dogs. But what do you especially love about Goldens?
I mean, I think part of it is just that happy face. They have such a joyous countenance. One of my son's friends was over here the other day, and he looked over at, Fritz, our little puppy, and Fritz was just, ha, 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 sitting there looking at him, and that smile, that golden retriever face, it's just so engaging. So I think I love that. I love that they are, on the whole, like as the breed is a friendly breed. And they really are, they're not a one-person dog. Everyone likes to argue that they're their dog, but really they're everybody's dog. Like if you're a family with a golden retriever, everybody's their favorite person. And I love that about them. And then,
Yes.
of course, what I didn't anticipate when I started was how passionate I would get about therapy work. And Goldens are just fantastic. It's just an amazing breed to do therapy work with.
That's wonderful. And so one of the things that you do is you share lots of information on your social media about your puppies or about puppies in general and the science of how to raise a puppy and what people need to know about puppies. And I think that's been going for quite a while ahead of the book. And
Yeah.
then somehow this wonderful book came about. And I love the book. I love how evidence-based it is,
Thank
but
you.
also it's just so enjoyable to read. And it gives us insight into some aspects of puppies that most of us never get to see because most of us never really see those early days and weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or if you visit a breeder, you're only there for a short time, so you don't get to see very much of that. So that's really fascinating. And
Mm.
there is such a big need for, I think, people to have good information about puppies. So how did the book come about? How did you turn all of this into a book? When did you decide that this should become a book?
Oh, I have such an unusual story here because I think, the traditional thing is people think I want to write a book and then they seek out a publisher and there's a whole path. I mean, you've done this, you know this. So you especially won't believe my story when I tell you what happened. Um, I had been every litter from the very first one, I kept a private blog for all of our families. And I increasingly posted on that. So I think the first litters, there were probably like 3 times a week, I was putting something on the blog for them to read or to watch. And I think by the time I got to before I started writing Puppy Brain, I was having to control myself because they had something every day for sure. They had to read and watch. And I sometimes twice a day. And then as the puppies were close to going home, I'm like, oh, okay, just in case you weren't real clear, like, here's some more videos on like resource guarding. And, I just really wanted to prepare our families so that what I was doing here, they were able to just take the baton and run with their puppies and continue it seamlessly. And I was, of course, posting all of that, a lot of that on Instagram. I mean, I, I'm not a person who goes on Instagram for cute things. I love learning, and I just felt like I have cute puppies, but maybe if I have cute puppies and you look at that, maybe I can get you to learn something about dogs at the same time. And we can begin to change how we treat dogs. So that was all happening, and people began to say, if you thought about writing a book, you should write a book. I started to hear that a lot because my Instagram really took off and really grew. And so then I thought, oh, you know what I'll do? I was writing these 2,200 character Instagram captions, and I was like packing in as much as I could into each day's caption. And I thought, I'll just take these captions and I'll print them and turn them into a book and I'll self publish it. So that I began to kind of work on that process. And I didn't know that my agent at that time had been ghost following me. She didn't officially follow me, but she checked my Instagram because she didn't want other agents to see that she was following me. And so she was clever about it. And so she was following and she saw me say that. She DM'd me and said, "Are you really serious about writing a book? And do you have an agent?" And so I thought maybe it was like a bot. Yeah, I thought, oh, it's some sort of troll. It's a stalker. It's not real. I didn't really like. And then I looked her up and I asked an author friend, and she was legitimate. So we spoke, and she's also a repurposed lawyer who loves books. And I loved her. From our first conversation, I felt safe with her. I felt like I could trust her. I didn't really do a whole lot of vetting or due diligence. I signed her as my agent. I just had no idea. And she said, well, okay, we're going to create this proposal, and I still have no clue what's happening. And we sent the proposal out, and my book went to auction, and the rest is history. I loved Celadon and chose them as my publisher.
Awesome. I think that's wonderful. And
Yeah.
I understand that you would be like, is this a bot? Is this person for real? Because you actually have to be really careful, I think, in
Yeah.
publishing. There are a lot of people waiting to, like vanity publishers and so
Yeah.
on, waiting to, fake authors, basically. So,
Yes.
but I think that's absolutely wonderful that she got in touch. I especially love that she was secretly following you so that no other agents would get the idea.
She's just so cute. I love her so much. She's great.
That's wonderful. Good. And so the rest is history because now it's a national bestseller and
Mhm.
it's absolutely wonderful book. And as I said, one of my favorite parts is actually about the development of puppies. And so I was wondering if we could talk, first of all, about what puppies are like when they're born, because
Mhm.
obviously you're there through this whole process and then the first 8 weeks until they go home.
Yeah.
So let's start with what the puppies are like when they're born.
It is a magical experience. It is very stressful every time. It is never gotten easier from the first litter. Because when they, my repro vet, I even gave him credit in the book for saying this, Dr. Christensen. He says, when birth is going as it should, they're like sausage shaped torpedoes. They should just come out, one after the other, and it's not painful for dogs the way it is for humans because they're literally, in their sack and they're just shooting out, and they're a litter bearing species. So when they first come out, we do help. I tear the sac, I clear the airways, mom's tearing the umbilical cord. And my whole, there's a lot I'm thinking about when they come out is, do I see that they look like they're breathing or that they're moving? Do I see movement in the puppy? I mean, that's kind of like the first thing I'm looking for is, are you alive? That's the first thing I'm looking for. And then when we see that movement, we know that, okay, it's all systems go. We're doing all the things to get them cleaned off and clean their umbilical cord and get them onto the milk bar as fast as possible. And it is stunning. Sometimes we've had puppies born that the placenta hasn't even been delivered yet. Puppy's out, there's the umbilical cord, the placenta is still in mom, and they start to nurse. I mean, it's
Wow.
really extraordinary to watch the way that they are designed. And the one thing they can do, they can't see, they can't hear, they can't regulate their own body temperature, but they can find mom and they can nurse. It's pretty amazing.
So they're like little heat-seeking potatoes
Yes,
looking
that's
for a
it.
mom and milk.
They know her smell, that's in their brain already, and they find her and they begin nursing. It's rather extraordinary.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I think people know a lot more about now is that when they bring a puppy home, they know that they need to socialize the puppy.
Hmm.
And I think, of course, one of the things that you talk about so brilliantly in your book is the fact that actually so much socialization has to happen ahead of that. So in your
Hmm.
home, you're doing a lot of socialization. And
Hmm.
I wondered if you could give me an example of that.
Oh boy. There's a lot. There's um I think, our outdoor area serves a lot of purposes. So it's a large area on synthetic lawn, and then we put up puppy gates around that. And then we put a variety of things in that area that have different heights for them. Socialization, it's not just to people. I think that maybe people think that's all that it is, and it's not. It's actually just to the world. It's just getting that puppy brain opened up to there's going to be unexpected textures. There's going to be unexpected heights. I might tumble off of that. Something might fly overhead. The thing overhead might sound like a bird. It might sound like an airplane. It might sound like a helicopter. I'm going to hear gardeners, right? Like that, we're creating an environment for them to just be a puppy. They're just living their life out there, playing, wrestling, doing all the things. And in the midst of all of that, they are experiencing so much of the world, the smells that are floating in, like the cars that are going past on the street. There's just a lot happening in that brain that's helping that brain grow in a way where they're open to the world and not afraid of the world. It isn't an assault of newness when they leave our home. They have already had a brain full of newness and they're used to new. So the new might look different or smell different or feel different, but the concept of new is not new, if that makes sense.
I like that way of putting it. And so you do a lot to socialize them to people and to
Yes.
habituate them to everything in the world that they basically need to know about. But one of the other things you talk about is how you make some of that kind of gradually develop. So how you
Hmm.
start with something easy and then you gradually make it a little bit more and a little bit more. And I
Mhm.
wondered if you could just tell us a little bit more about the socialization that you do and
Yeah.
habituation to things and just
Yeah.
explain that.
I think that like layering is probably one of the biggest things I've come up like developed in the process of raising puppies is I realized, if you take a 7-week-old puppy and you just put them under your arm and you march into the bathroom and you flick the light switch on and the fan comes on and then you turn on the water. And I mean, this is a lot for a puppy to take in, and that is scary, and you can feel them get stiff. So we layer the process of a bath starting at 3 weeks of age. So at 3 weeks of age, I'll just do a back end bath. I'll just get their back end wet with warm water. I might just dunk them real gently into like a vessel of warm water, just their back legs, and then dry them and then cuddle them so that everything's safe. We're feeling good. Everything's safe. And it's real quick. And the whole process from 3 to 8 weeks of age, we're adding we're adding layers to getting to the point where we're marching into the bathroom and getting a bath. So that when we're doing something like, you think about what's traditionally scary to dogs, many dogs hate a bath. Many dogs hate a car. So if you know that about dogs, many dogs are terrified of fireworks, then we can take these things and we can say, okay, a bath has 100 components to it. So let's desensitize every single component methodically, carefully, slowly, so that today we're just turning the water on and we're giving treats while we do that. Today we're turning the light switch on with the fan. And then tomorrow we turn the water on, but we're still just standing here eating treats. We're not anywhere near it. And that layering helps them have a managed response to something that's traditionally scary so that when you put all the pieces together, it's all familiar. And it can still be scary, but it's not to that point of terror. And we're helping them stay safe. We've established a secure attachment to us as the humans. We're giving treats, which makes it good. And all of that helps them not be afraid of something they would otherwise be afraid of.
And I love the way that you describe all of those things. So the treats, the attachment, breaking everything down, layering. And I think it's so important to do that because one of the things I try to always to tell people about puppies when they bring a puppy home is that the last thing you want to do with a puppy is to terrify them
Mhm.
because, that's going to be an awful experience and that's potentially then going to make them frightened of something for the rest of their lives
Yes.
if you're unlucky. And so I explain to people the need to break things down, and I think you just described it so beautifully, the way that you
Mm.
can break everything down into so many pieces. And we just think of it as, like you say, we think of it as a bath, but that's a really big thing.
Yeah.
So I love the way that you break all of these details down, even to
Mm.
like turning the light switch on, because there's a noise associated with that, and that's
Yes.
something and then the light changes, and that's something we don't pay attention to. But of course,
Yes.
puppies are so new; everything is so new to them.
Yes. And it might flicker. They're afraid of things. We just have to somehow get ourselves into their perspective and see the world. A ceiling fan could look very scary to a puppy if they've never seen it. And we just don't think about those things.
Yeah, yeah, and we don't at all. So I'm going to ask you what I think is kind of an impossible question, um, because I want to ask you, like, I find this absolutely fascinating, and I love hearing about all these different stages of the puppy's development while they're with you. And I was wondering if there is a part that for you is your favorite part, because I like it just all seems so adorable, apart from
Hmm.
maybe the beginning, which seems also quite stressful when they're
Yes.
born as well.
Yes.
But the
Yeah.
rest of it just seems adorable. So is there a favorite part for you?
Oh gosh. I think if I were asked this every day for the next year, I'd probably have a different answer every day because there are so many favorite parts. It's very satisfying to see like doing barrier challenges. I have a video that's pinned on my Instagram and it's like 7 minutes long. And I videoed this particular puppy every day from the first day I put her in a crate to find her food. We play this game, Find It, to the last day. In day one, you can see this stiff, scared puppy that doesn't want to come out of the crate, can't even work up the confidence to put her little paw over the edge of the crate. And then at 7 weeks of age, she is ripping around the living room. The confidence is off, it's through the roof. Seeing that light bulb moment happen where I think, oh, today's the day. Today's the day where something switched for you. And now you feel confident. And now tomorrow it will be where you took a baby step today, tomorrow you're going to take 10 steps. And I know that's coming. And then I can hardly wait for the next morning when I can see like now she's ripping around and it's so much fun. Like that light bulb moment is really satisfying to see.
That sounds just like so exciting. Yeah, that must
Yeah.
be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And so you've actually integrated a lot of science into the book. You know the science of what you're doing. You've done all the research, as you said earlier, and actually you also clearly have been keeping lots of notes on previous litters. So when it came to actually writing the book, how did you decide on the structure of the book and
Mm-hmm.
how to fit different aspects of like puppy development into the book? What was your
Mm-hmm.
process for doing that?
Originally, when I met with my editor at Celadon, they had asked if I could write a more comprehensive book because what we put in our proposal was actually going to be a little less. Like I think I can't remember even what the time frame was, but it wasn't through like a dog's life the way it was. And they asked if I could write it bigger, and I said, sure. I have this blog I can pull from. So originally, I just used the blog kind of as my structure, like the first 8 weeks. And then I like there's this concept in writing, this, of writing fat, of just I data dumped everything I could think about dogs into my Scrivener document. Um, and then I began to pare back. But that last chapter on saying goodbye, the Rainbow Bridge, felt non-negotiable. And a lot of people that looked at the manuscript felt like that was out of place on a book about raising a resilient dog. I felt really, really strongly that chapter needed to be in there because I have heard from so many people who feel very lost emotionally when they have to say goodbye. So it was kind of like, I would say, gut instinct to some degree. The spay and neuter chapter also, there's so much science coming out that I felt like I would be remiss not to include that more than anything as like, I know that that's going to get dated. I know that chapter will get dated, but at least it begins the conversation that people don't just take the old approach of spay and neuter at 6 months of age. At least like I'm introducing the conversation. And then I didn't feel like I could write a book without including therapy dogs because it's become such a huge part of what we do. So I guess like I kind of backed my way into what ultimately became the contents of the book. And then my editor did a brilliant job of reorganizing the structure. I have to give her a lot of credit. And my son, he kind of gave me the 4 parts. And so he was like, I think you should break it up. And so I have a great team. That's my answer, I guess, is I had good people on my team that helped structure it in a way that made sense.
I think every great writer has a great team behind them as
Mm,
well. I mean, we rely so much on our editors as well and
yeah.
everybody, around us when we're writing. But I absolutely agree that you were right to include that last chapter.
Mm,
I think that's such a difficult time for people, and so many people are so lost when they come to the end. And also, it's just fitting that you start. You have the story of how puppies get born, and then you also have the
yeah.
story of how they leave us at the end. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
it's a difficult topic, but it is an important one. And I love that you included all this different
Mm,
material in there. So another thing I want to ask you, is what's your advice to someone who's looking for a responsible breeder? Because so many people, it seems, don't actually do their research. And if they
mm-hmm.
don't do their research, then they're at risk of getting a puppy from a puppy mill.
Yeah.
And, then we know that they are more likely to have behavior issues and maybe health issues as well,
Mm-hmm.
because they've come from a very impoverished environment. It's not at all,
Yeah.
well, it's cruel, basically. And so
Yes.
what is your advice on someone who's obviously not everyone can come to you. So if
Right.
someone's looking for a breeder, what should they be looking for?
Um, oh man, that's such an important question. I think, the low bar, and it's so funny because it's so hard to find people who meet the low bar. The low bar is for golden retrievers, the health clearances, the big ones. I mean, there's more than this, but the big ones that are non-negotiables are a yearly eye exam, hip and elbow clearances, and a cardiac clearance with a board certified cardiologist, not a regular vet. That's it. You would think this is not hard. So every breed has their clearances that they should have. Those are listed on the OFA website, the Orthopedic Foundation for Animals. I always forget if it's America or OFA.org website. They do a great job. You can go on there, you can search a breed, and then you can see what clearances should be present for that breed. And that's just like entry level, low bar. Every breeder who is intentionally pairing dogs should have those clearances on both parents, no excuses. And my position is if you're going to buy from somebody who doesn't have those clearances, please go rescue a golden retriever. Please go rescue a dog because it's actually a backdoor support to backyard breeding. By buying from somebody who doesn't have the clearances, that's what we're doing. Um, so that's just the low bar. And then I would say look at their socials because I know everybody doesn't like social media and people don't need to do what I do with my Instagram. But gosh, it's just not that hard to take a video of the of how you're raising your puppies. It's just not that hard. And that should be available. I just feel like that should be available on a website or on a social media site somehow so that if you can't physically look at a puppy, a litter being raised by a breeder in advance of putting down a deposit, then at least you should be able to see video that shows that they're doing some rearing protocols. So a question that's a great question to ask is, can you tell me what you're doing on a week by week basis to meet the changing needs of puppies? Because there are things we can do every single week of development. And that's an intentionality that I think is really important that's present in breeders. So those are two pretty big things that'll help people weed through breeders.
Yeah, and I think most people unfortunately miss them. I mean, one of the things I always say to people is a warning sign is if the person is willing to bring the puppy to meet you in a parking lot and give you the puppy at that point, because then you know nothing about where the puppy has come from, and you don't know what circumstances, if they were raised actually even in a home, to start with, or in someone's shed down the garden or whatever, or in basically like a factory setup, and that's a real warning sign as well. But yeah, I and completely agree with those tips that you mentioned. And we
I should say I do meet people in a parking lot, but they always come to I mean, not always, but of course they're welcome to come. We do puppy visits and stuff. And I just on our go home day, because people have seen it all over my Instagram. I like to have puppies travel together before they go into the car of their forever families. So anyhow, just so that people no, that's why that's on my Instagram is people are coming to my home first. And obviously I have a very transparent Instagram.
Yes, and they can see exactly what you're doing to raise the puppies, and
Mm-hmm.
we've only touched on a tiny amount of that here. We haven't. You do so much for them. Whereas, I was thinking, especially because there is even a particular parking lot not too far from me that is a common place because a lot of puppies from puppy mills come from up country, and they
Oh,
just bring them down and they meet people there, and people have not been able to see
oh,
anything on the socials of how these puppies were being raised or anything like that. They know
yeah.
nothing about that other than this is where they can meet the puppy, and then obviously that this puppy has not come from a good responsible
Mm.
source. So that's
Oh,
why I mentioned that one.
yeah.
Yeah. But it's so useful to have your guidance on this because you do all the right things and you know exactly what to do. So I think anyone should read your book and go to your socials to see exactly what kinds of things need to be done.
And one other thing is just to ask for referrals. I mean, anybody could go on my Instagram and a whole bunch of Nickelberry families are commenting and interacting on there. And I post them, I post their accounts. It's just in 2025, it's really easy to get referrals and talk to other people and just do a little bit of vetting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I've got a question that we asked all of the authors at Barkfest. And so we would have asked it of you then if we could. So I want to ask you it now to make sure we get your answer to this. So, what gives you hope for the dog human bond?
Hmm. Huh. I think I love what I'm seeing on the human side of the ledger for kids. There's some really, really tremendous changes happening in the way that humans are raising kids. And I see that bleeding over with dogs. And so that makes me there's Dr. Kennedy, she wrote this book, Good Inside. And, it's an approach that honors kids and sees the world from their perspective. And I feel like the more that we see that in humans, it helps people. I'll see those light bulbs happening on my account. I'll make a comment and people will say, that's exactly what I just heard about my, 4-year-old. And I think like that gives me so much hope that people are willing to look at dogs as sentient beings, that we're moving away from this, master dog perspective. And, I'm the debunked alpha dog theory, that we're moving away from that and that we are recognizing these are individuals that have particular needs to that particular animal that's different, even if it is a golden retriever, different than this golden retriever. And I think we're doing that and it's happening. And that just makes me so excited for dogs and for their humans.
I love that answer. Thank you. And so I know that you've prepared a reading for us,
Oh,
and I'm
yes.
going to ask you to do that. I'm going to go off video just while you do the reading, but I'm still here and I'm
Okay.
listening, and I'm really looking forward to hearing you read.
I actually forgot I was doing this. Okay. Okay. So this is from page 108, and the heading is, How do you say goodbye? This is probably the question I get asked the most on Instagram. Over and over, people tell me that they'd keep the whole litter or that they could never do what I do because they couldn't let them go. I understand. But I also know that if they did what I do, they would look forward to Gotcha Day with as much excitement as I do. Here's the thing. From the moment puppies are born, I scrutinize each of their little faces, often wondering aloud who they are going to be and who their family will be. Every time I pick up a puppy, this thought is in the forefront of my brain. Because families often wait for more than a year for one of our pups, I get to know them really well. I see on social media when they've gotten married or had a baby or lost someone precious. I know what hole each puppy will fill in his new family. Once those puppies are born, I think about the families incessantly. They live in my head for 8 weeks, conversations and comments floating around as we raise the pups. Our 8-year-old suffers with a lot of anxiety, and we are hoping a dog will help him. My husband died suddenly, and I have 3 kids under the age of 7. I think a dog would be healing to our family. We love to sail and want a dog who can join us. I'm single and live in San Francisco and just want a buddy who can go everywhere with me. My daughter-in-law has been battling cancer, and I've seen how important therapy dogs are to her. I want to raise one to bless other people going through the same thing. As the puppies reveal to me who they are, I begin to make loose matches in my head. In a recent litter, one of the pups demonstrated from very early on that she was highly human-oriented, grunting when she saw that I was in her vicinity, then snuggling her head into my neck and grunting when I finally picked her up. More than fetching or swimming or wrestling, this puppy's biggest language was affection. She was made to love and be loved. If she caught sight of me while chewing on a toy or mouthing a sibling, the world stopped turning and she sprinted to my feet for petting. Knowing that she was going home to a young couple who had surrendered their dream of children, struggling with infertility, who had longed for a baby and been unable to conceive, who were filled with so much love and were now able to pour it out to their puppy, I am pretty sure that I counted down the days to Gotcha Day with even more excitement than they did. I couldn't wait to place that ball of love and fur into their arms, knowing what a salve this puppy was going to be to their hearts. In one of Harper's litters, I placed a puppy with an older couple who recognized that after 30 years of marriage and 5 golden retrievers, this would be the last one they raised. They described a quiet life in which they started each morning with coffee on the patio together and then walked into their little town, where they had been spreading golden joy for the duration of their marriage. What an honor to raise the puppy who would appreciate such a life and who would be worthy of being the last in such a legacy. As the puppies grew, I noticed one little girl who not only kept watch for me, but was the first to greet any visitor to our home. By the time she was 7 weeks old, I knew she was the one. And then there was the family who wanted their first baby to have 4 legs instead of 2. They wanted to raise a puppy together before bringing a child into the world. They were responsible and earnest, and I knew that they would parent their puppy in a way that would result in a well-mannered, kind, gentle adult dog. As I observed their litter, I was astonished by one little boy pup. It is highly unusual for puppies not to be mouthy. It is literally in their DNA. But this pup was different. Gentle and patient, he would often sidle up next to me as I sat in the puppy area, content to stretch out along my legs as I played with the other puppies. He had massive paws, a massive head, and a massive heart. I sent him home knowing that he would become a beloved childhood friend to the baby who would arrive the following year. And he did. I've received years of pictures, first of him encircling his little human, then countless pictures of him lying along the side of the infant, then the toddler, then the child. Yes, I gifted that little human with a wonderful childhood dog, but I was equally gifted with the continued delight of seeing who he became in that child's life. I guess I just don't see it as goodbye. My role in their lives was always meant to be temporary. They were made for someone else, and I am just the lucky human who got to prepare them for their future. I've not experienced a more profound honor than that. It is with the deepest satisfaction and joy that I place them into their family's arms and say, Godspeed, little one.
That was just beautiful, and it brought tears to my eyes. Thank you. That was gorgeous. And it's so nice to hear it in your own voice as well, having read it
Thank
before.
you.
So that's lovely. Thank you very, very much. So we have to move on to the last section now, which is where we each recommend a book. So I'm going to start with you and ask you what you have been reading recently that you would like to recommend to us.
Okay, well, I can't wait to hear what you have too. This is the sweetest little book. It's called Dog Poems, and it doesn't have the author's name on the front, so I wrote it down here. It's if you look it up, it's an anthology, and the author, one of the co-authors is Christopher Waite, Wait, and it's a collection of poems by like Emily Dickinson and just about dogs, and it's just the sweetest little book. It's a great gift, but also like I'll just read a little poem when I need a pick-me-up or with a cup of tea, and I just love it. So
That sounds perfect and like a great
yeah.
gift for anyone who loves dogs, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Fantastic. Thank you. So mine is not a dog book. Mine is fiction. Mine is The Kindest Lie by Nancy Johnson. And it's a really good read. It's so the main character, she Ruth, she's married. It starts on the day that President Obama was elected, like the election day when the results are out, and it only runs until the New Year's Day following that. So it's all quite compressed into
Hmm.
time. She's married. It seems like there's a whole lot of hope at the start, and her husband wants them to start a family. And it just isn't fitting with her because she has a secret that she hasn't told him. So she tells him actually, when she was 17, she had a baby, and that baby was given up for adoption. And he obviously is upset that he didn't know this about her before. And so she actually goes home to the town where she's from. She decides she has to find out what happened to this boy because she knows nothing about what
Hmm.
happened. And so it's about that basically, her search for him. And she hasn't thought any of it through. She hasn't even thought about what is she going to do if she finds him, if she finds out who he is, which she does. So anyway, it's a really good read. It's really well written. So that's by Nancy Johnson, and actually she has a new book out now, which I'm going to get next because I love this. It was such a great story, really well told, and very nice as well because so she comes from a poor town. She's She's her and her husband, they're a black family, but there are white families in the story too. So it's just like normal to have, different ethnic groups as friends and as
Hmm.
part of the story. And that's a really nice thing as well. It's
Oh
really
yeah.
well told.
Oh, it
So
sounds great.
yeah, so interesting. Like, is she going to find the boy and what happened? And what will she do then? So yeah, it's a really good read. So Kerry, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we could talk for hours, but it's been a real pleasure to chat with you and to hear more about your book, Puppy Brain. For anyone listening, Puppy Brain: How Our Dogs Learn, Think and Love is a national bestseller in the US. It's out now in hardback, but the paperback is coming on April 29th. So you can pre-order the paperback now if you want to, and you should get it if you want to know about puppies and how to raise your dog to be happy, healthy, and resilient throughout their life. It's got tons of tips and science-backed advice in there and lots of adorable puppy photos too. So
Oh,
thank you.
yeah.
If people want to know more about you, where should they go?
Instagram for sure. I mean, I'm there every day. So that's just Nickelberry Goldens. And then also my website. I always want to point out that the book has a companion website with a lot of videos on it. So kerrynichols.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with me about the book. It's been such a pleasure. Thanks to everyone who's been listening or watching. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure that you always get future episodes, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Positive Posting Conversation. If you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show and write us a review via your podcast app. For the show notes, visit companionanimalpsychology.com. This show was produced by Zazie Todd. The music is Melody from Paris by Studio Le Bousse. See you next time.